Liberal Viewer present.
So one technique Fox News uses to spin stories is bringing on a right-wing partisan with no one to contradict his or her opinion but the partisan journalist doing the interview, which is exactly what happened last Friday when Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly brought on Jay Sekulow, chief counsel of the conservative Christian rights legal group the American Center for Law and Justice, to talk about potential replacements for retiring Supreme Court Justice David Souter, and instead of informing her viewers of Jay Sekulow's biases, Megyn Kelly just bolstered his credibility with the introduction you can see here.
Jay Allen Sekulow is chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and knows just about as much about the Supreme Court as anybody I've ever met. Jay, good morning to you.
Hey, thanks, Megan.
Now, whatever the extent of Jay Sekulow's knowledge about the U.S. Supreme Court, it's been my experience from watching and reading his statements over the years that, in what's probably a fundraising tactic, he often gives out misinformation designed to scare other conservative Christians into believing Christianity is under attack, and I'll back up that accusation with a specific example you can find at tinyurl.com/dishonestj, while in contrast, you'll hear no specific examples to back up Jay Sekulow's accusation of radicalism against Federal Appeals Court Judge Sonia Sotomayor that you can see in this clip.
All right, we've got some possible replacements for Justice Souter that we believe may be on the short list based on what President Obama has said. Let me show you the screen and we can go through a couple of them. Most people believe the front runner, if you can read this, a little small, is Sonia Sotomayor of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. That's here in New York City. What do you think? Is she the inside vote? Is she the smart bet?
I think I think she's clearly leading the pack as far as what the president would like to do. But you're talking about a judge on the Second Circuit that is left in the judicial philosophy range much further to the left than Justice Ginsburg or Justice Souter. This would be a beginning of the reshaping of the court. It doesn't change a vote necessarily, but it's the beginning of the reshaping of the federal judiciary here. And someone like Judge Sotomayor would be a significant shift for the court, the beginning of that shift, certainly.
Now, in that last clip, when I heard Megyn Kelly react incredulously to Jay Sekulow's claim that Judge Sotomayor is to the left of Souter and Ginsburg, I briefly hoped it meant Megyn Kelly would ask Jay Sekulow how a judge originally appointed to the bench by a Republican president could fit that description, but instead Megyn Kelly's incredulity led only to the softball question you can see here.
You say she's to the left of Justice Ginsburg and Justice Stevens, and having covered the court for years, I think to myself, how is that possible?
Well, I just had a case where the court was unanimous. It was involving the Ten Commandments issue, and the court was unanimous 9-0. I would not expect if Judge Sotomayor was confirmed that it probably would be 8-1. She has a very, very strict view of church-state separation. She is aggressive on this idea of a living Constitution. Now, look, I believe the Constitution can change. You got to amend it through the amendment process. Judges don't get to rewrite it. She would be. It would be an aggressive nominee, but I think clearly there's no doubt that your first name you mentioned, Sonia Sotomayor, or Judge Sotomayor, it will clearly be one of the ones on that list, if not at the very top of that list.
Now, notice how Jay Sekulow never mentioned even one specific case or statement from Judge Sotomayor to back up his characterization of her, and Megyn Kelly never called him on it. Plus, in that entire interview that you can see in full for yourself at tinyurl.com/judgeslam, neither Jay Sekulow nor Megyn Kelly ever mentioned that Judge Sotomayor was originally appointed to the bench by Republican President George H.W. Bush, all of which together I think qualifies this video as the 71st addition to my Fox News Bias playlist that you can find at tinyurl.com/foxnewsbias. But I want to know what you think. If Megyn Kelly were a nonpartisan journalist covering this story, wouldn't she have pressed Jay Sekulow for examples to back up his characterization of Judge Sotomayor, and wouldn't she have mentioned that Judge Sotomayor was originally appointed by a Republican? And on the question of motive, why do you think Fox News broadcasts this factless smear against a judge originally appointed by a Republican who could be the first Latina nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court?
YouTube, you decide.